Okay, here, Mickey Mouse Productions. It's very easy to be cynical about religion. Even these charismatic churches, I've been in Pentecostal charismatic meetings, and of course, laying on of hands, praying for people, releasing your body in an atmosphere of prayer. That's a profound thing, and not to be discounted or anything. And what I have come to recognize in terms of philosophy of religion is that most religion is all show and no go, so that the charismatics are getting off on each other's energy, the fact that, you know, all these other people are abiding by a common sense of belief, even if not an articulated belief, and that in itself is transcendent. And I've talked about religions in terms of, you know, different religious well, even, yesterday or the day before, apparently the internet crashed when Deepak Chopra was doing a meditation live show. For me, meditation, switching off the mind, that's the first part. That's getting past, then once you clamp down on that, then the entanglement and the embeddedness is something that you can actually start mediating around the edges, because you're starting to get a perspective, a bird's eye view on your own narrative and your own novel, so that you can extricate yourself, and so that's important. But mindfulness, to me, that's mind emptiness. Mindfulness is the sort of correlations that I'm talking about, and I'm not giving you any set of correlations, but I'm saying that we need some correlations, and mine is a suggestion of how to structure the mind given the new situation that we're facing. A police commander was shot a few days ago, and a couple other police wounded in a domestic dispute. Another sordid tale. I know a 5-year-old girl survived but was wounded. The rest of the family dead. We can look at a lot of murder-suicides coming up simply because people in other people's faces, if there are guns in the house and there's a lot of antagonism afloat in the air, electrically charging arguments and so on, things, people can fly off the handle. A lot of people are going to fly off the handle. So that's one major concern. Certainly suicide, maybe group suicide, will become popular, because one has to start reckoning in terms of valuing what human life actually is, and whether quality of life is important or it's just, breathing important. So the other thing is gangs, like Clockwork Orange and Memoirs of a Survivor. Doris Lessing, there would be a grander in scope tendency for young people to get frustrated with this situation and to start collaborating either on the internet and having meetings and going through neighborhoods and causing destruction as part of this apocalyptic fever that, how do we restabilize? Orwell says that any group that throws over another group to take over a government in terms of a revolution, the people there doing that, initiating that, are not because they want to change the social structure of the world and help people. It's because they want power from the people who have power. And even in Saddam Hussein's Iraq, when you think of the bloodshed, the pain, the horror, the hardship of people in Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, because of this psychological embargo that dismisses the fact that we're all earthlings. I believe in Jesus because Jesus is the truth, the life, and the way. And the truth and the life of the way includes somebody who goes into the temple and would go into some of these charismatic churches, turn over the tables, saying that this is not a money-making adventure. This is a spiritual quest. And purity of motivation is the very core of the first step of what that means. Islam is a very rigorous religion, having to pray 5 times daily and so on and so forth. And yet it can be a very violent religion. And that goes back to the Crusades when Christians used to slaughter Muslims and they were promised a ticket to heaven if they did that, just the way suicide bombers now are promised a ticket to heaven. These old squabbles, these old 25-6 were just murdered a week and a half ago. The fact that generations cannot eclipse the entanglement of their own history is testimonial to why we don't move ahead. So Jesus Christ, the life and the way, helping the sick, the poor, the blind, healing and feeding, and saying that, to walk on water, it's not just bread you need for your corporeal reality. And that reality, because now we're finding out, that secular reality, so many people are turning to religion all of a sudden. You see these religious leaders on TV talking about, and really, they're all phonies. They're pretty much job-oriented religious people, the same way country leaders are groomed as political whatever affidavits. Okay, so we're going to look at the main thing, I think, with religion is release and holding your hands up and praying. This is almost a left-right brain thing, prayer. I often on the inversion board, I'll pull back and forth, left and right, because the left brain controlling the right part of the body, right brain controlling the left part. And you want to always particularly establish the realm of the corpus callosum so that you've got a lot of fluidity between left and right. Women tend to have, we'll talk about the Mona Lisa smile and stuff and the creation of the modern woman, the Frigidaire woman. But generally, women develop faster emotionally. They have more complex brains, need more sleep. All this is research that is very established research, but subdued. And they have more activity between left and right brain. And then for some reason, right around age 25, I guess, when things start shutting down and you start playing your options, it seems that sort of backtracks on itself, because after all, it is a man's world, and that encumbers the ability to plasticize and formulate a different reality other than the very prescriptive one. Even though during this health crises, most of these major administrator doctors are women, and that's very, for each province in Canada, for the main Canadian overseer. So a lot of change coming there. I want to suggest that in any religion, belief is like placebo, and you can plug into the electricity of it. And I think it's ridiculous that Christians think that if somebody is born in an ice paddy on the other side of the planet and never heard about the message of Jesus Christ, that they would go to hell because they've never taken Jesus as their personal savior. There are so many flaws in the religious structure, even in Sunday school. Like you're told about Jacob and Esau, and we're supposed to take Jacob's side, and he's deceived his brother Esau and gotten the birthright falsely, and yet he seems to be the good guy. And there's also some issues with Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve and God, and the whole knowledge of good and evil, and what, there's complications coming down and Job's suffering and so on. There's parts of the Bible that are almost ludicrous, set up as symbolic, and that is functional reality. At any rate, let's, before we go too far here, the last day, I talked about this scene but didn't show it.
Just like your dad. You don't do shit, and you never gonna amount to shit. All you ever do around here is eat, sleep, and shit. Look at this place. The way y'all act, y'all must think I'm the maid.
Is that it? I gotta go.
Hell no, it ain't it. It ain't it till I say it's it, damn it.
Okay, that whole idea of the crises of childhood stays with us into adulthood and complicates our ability to navigate emotional embrace and release. We become, and particularly I think of my own depression in 2003, 2004, and even some deeply embedded things that actually came out when I was making a documentary movie on art therapy. I realized that, I had this thing inside me, this core of hatred, suspiciousness, and jealousy, and all those complicated things. And then I felt such a release, even though for years I had been, what I would call symptom-free, depression-wise. There's still things that we keep buried in us, and that's often because of, as a child, innocence. To me, innocence and experience, and Blake talks about, how kids are pulled off the echoing green and they're put in single file and they go into the school and their minds are, this fearful symmetry, this mind-forged manacles that grip reality and dissect it, murder to dissect, and so on, and break everything down. So the consciousness of being out under the cosmos playing is replaced by this whole notion of categorical courses, social studies, whatever. Okay, we're going over to a different reality. How our male kids, children grow up. And, born on the 4th of July. What a transition. Goes from the celebration of the 4th of July parade with veterans, reacting, knee-jerk response, PTSD, because deeply embedded in them is a fearful scene, a horror show that has embedded itself in the very center of their firing and wiring neural map. And they cannot extricate themselves. It's interesting that if they write stories and try to feature that reality, I find this whole thing with Tom Cruise, it reminds me of my being in high school. And sure enough, if the if the military had come to my high school and made a pitch, and I thought it would impress the girls or it would make me some kind of hero, I'd only see that side of the equation, just as Tom Cruise only sees that side of the equation. It's only when he gets over there and he thinks in a friendly fire incident he's killed his best friend, he himself is shot, he ends up paraplegic, washed, hosed down, in the hospitals. The respect that he thought that he would get, that he would come back to this, great homecoming and so on, that never materialized. And I find it, mind-boggling that we didn't learn the lesson that this movie, Oliver Stone, has taught us in this movie. And most people haven't seen it, because most people are going to see Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Fast and the Furious, Porky's, whatever. The proper amount of condescension to evaluation of life that we see as we are, packaged in our upbringing.
We don't need no thought control, no dark sarcasm. classroom. Teacher, leave them kids alone.
So this is not, anti-education. This is this, the teacher who puts them down for writing poetry, for squelching creativity, for stressing discipline. And it's this whole brick in the wall society that is now collapsing. Even before coronavirus. Anxiety pitches in so many people were running at high levels. And of course, schools are part of the state's manipulation of you to make you a productive citizen, not to encourage you to shine and to transcend reality. They want you to fit in. They want you to be another cog in a big machine of the economic reality that catapults people into, like Amazon and Google with billions and billions of dollars in countries where people are starving to death. Okay, and that's it. Why would young people not want to take a wrecking ball to everything that exists? Because what we see, me being somebody older, see as stability, as psychological stability, they see as a constellation of farces that have recommended themselves because of this eating your tail notion. I want to leave on a positive note to set up, sort of a Good Friday. I find it mind-boggling that Easter's going to be at the peak of the curve, and we're all sort of entombed now, and are we all going to rise up singing or not? And the amount of effort that it takes to transform the human brain, particularly if one's talking, cognitive therapy, going into a certain intersection and changing a certain particular behavior, as opposed to overall transformation. This is an opportunity, the coronavirus, for an overall transformation. And an energy, a religion that heals is a religion worth believing in. To think that somebody, some one religion overarches all the rest. No, one God overarches all the rest, and whether that's, Allah or God or whatever word you want to give it, the important thing is to feel the love of the universe and the beauty of life flowering in one on a journey that is complex. It is 100 billion neuron density that we're dealing with, densities and depravities within the brain. And a left brain tendency to fill in the blanks with whatever BS comes along, to buy into things because we don't want to be the one to stand up and, like in the movie Full Metal Jacket, like who can face that face of authority? Okay. In terms of inflammation, in terms of energy, you cannot participate in this without it becoming a transcendental experience, because it involves the corporeal self. It's mystical in its chorus and its movement. It's wave theory. It's not particle theory. It's profound. a happy experience. It's a making a joyful noise unto God. And the energy rises up, continues to rise up. Boom, 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 boom.